Revealed, how one incredible 12-year-old girl transformed a crisis into a life-changing solution. It was a typical gray evening in the small Midwestern town of Willow Creek. Storm clouds gathered ominously overhead, foreshadowing the chaos that would be unleashed. Behind the dark silhouettes of shuttered storefronts, a girl named Sophie Jenkins watched the skies, her heart heavy with worry. Just days ago, she was a carefree kid, but now, with her father laid off from the local factory and her mother working double shifts at the diner, life felt transformed in ways too harsh to comprehend. As rain poured in torrents and wind howled violently, Sophie peered out from her bedroom window, tears prickling her eyes. She witnessed her family's struggles reflected in the faces of her neighbors, a veteran with worn-out boots, a single parent juggling two kids, elderly couples holding hands as they braced against the storm. Their lives were woven with hardships, yet they remained proud. Sophie sensed their dignity wheezing under the weight of a storm that hadn't just come from the sky, but from an economy crumbling around them. After the storm passed, Sophie stepped outside to be met by an image of devastation. The streets that once buzzed with laughter and warmth were now strewn with debris, homes cracked and battered. It felt like a war zone, and for a moment, despair gripped her tightly. But then, something sparked within her. She saw the strength in her neighbors' faces, and it ignited a fierce determination. They were resilient, and she would be too. Rallying her classmates the following week, Sophie introduced the neighbors' table. It became a movement of communal dinners to feed those in need, an enchanting idea, simple yet powerful. With every meal served, she could almost hear the spirits of hope rising again. The townsfolk began to gather, sharing stories and laughter, slowly reclaiming the warmth of their community, yet not everyone believed in her vision. A few adults dismissed her youthful idealism, shaking their heads in skepticism. "Kids can't fix grown-up problems," they murmured. But Sophie stood her ground, fueled by the hope radiating from parents who bled for their children. In those doubts, she found fire. "Everyone deserves a meal at our table," she declared, her small voice carrying weight that ignited sparks in the hearts of her peers. Just as Sophie's vision began to bloom, a wealthy donor entered the picture with an alluring grant that promised to expand her initiative beyond her wildest dreams. The townsfolk buzzed with excitement. But behind that enticing smile was a darker offer, one that threatened to strip away the dignity of her neighbors who had fought so hard for self-sufficiency. She felt a sickening knot in her stomach. Was she prepared to compromise for the sake of easy solutions? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sophie weighed her choices, the air crackled with tension. She stood in front of her gathered community, her heart racing, the eyes of hopeful neighbors pleading for change. "This isn't just about food," she said, voice trembling but unwavering. "This is about our dignity, our strength." The room fell silent. Would her refusal to compromise bring unity or further division? Sophie felt the weight of every story in that crowd, and she knew the real battle was only just beginning. As the whispers of doubt echoed in the shadows, she took a deep breath, ready to be the voice her town needed. The room felt thick with uncertainty. Sophie's heart beat louder than ever, pounding against her ribcage like a drum demanding attention. She scanned the faces in front of her, some supportive, others skeptical. But mostly, there was a hunger for change. She had ignited that spark, and now it was flickering, struggling against air that felt too heavy. An older man spoke up first. "But how can we keep this going without help?" His voice trembled, uncertainty spilling out. "We need funding, Sophie." "What's wrong with accepting it?" Sophie clenched her fists, remembering the hopeful glances of the people who came to the neighbor's table. They were tired of being treated like charity cases. They wanted to be seen as contributors, part of the solution, not just receivers of handouts. "It feels wrong to let someone else dictate how we feed our neighbors," she replied, her voice stronger now. "We're not just creating meals, we're building a community." A woman behind her murmured, "What if that grant really could help us serve more people?" "We want to help, right?" Sophie paused. Every word stung. Their fear was palpable, their desperation real. She understood it, but the thought of handing over her vision to someone who saw those meals as transactions twisted her stomach. "We can do this ourselves," she insisted, grounding herself. "Every meal we serve is a step toward healing. And every one of those meals should come from us, as a community." The silence stretched, and then a voice broke through. "What if you're wrong, Sophie? What if we can't do this alone?" It was her best friend, Mia. They had spent countless afternoons plotting their plans, and yet, Mia's doubt felt like a dagger. Sophie knew Mia wanted to protect her, but the thought of giving up that hope sent chills down her spine. "I guess," she stumbled, "what I mean is we're all we have. If we rely on someone else's money, we lose control over our purpose." The room buzzed as uncertainty crossed faces. She could sense the doubts shifting like dark clouds, ready to drown their dreams again. Sophie took a deep breath. "We need to start by being honest with each other. Yes, this is scary, but look at us. Together we faced a storm, didn't we? We're stronger than we think," she said, her own heart swelling with conviction. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. More voices joined, sharing anecdotes of hardship, triumph, and laughter shared over simple meals. Each story fed the flames of hope that Sophie had kindled. As the meeting drew to a close, a plan began to take shape, forged in determination. They would organize fundraisers, seek donations of ingredients, and open their doors wider to their neighbors. A movement began to brew, not just about food, but about dignity, collaboration, and community. But just as encouragement began to grow, an email landed in Sophie's inbox. It was from the wealthy donor. Her heart skipped as she read the message, diving deep into the tempting offer once more. What would happen if she accepted it? Would she sacrifice her integrity for the sake of ease? Could she take a detour and still reach the same destination? The stakes were high. Sophie knew a choice lay ahead that could change everything. Could she forge a path that would unite her town while keeping its spirit intact? Or would the allure of quick help steer her off the road they had just begun to pave? The question loomed over her as she stared out the window, watching dark clouds reform on the horizon. It was clear, the storm wasn't over yet. Sophie sat in front of her laptop, the glow from the screen casting shadows across the room that echoed her uncertainty. The email from the donor seemed to pulse in front of her. She read it again, a security blanket fashioned from dollar signs, promising immediate relief to her vision. But at what cost? Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. She thought about her neighbors, each person relying on the neighbor's table for nourishment, both physical and emotional. They were all counting on her to lead them through the uncertainty, not into the hands of someone who might view their struggles as mere statistics. Could she really justify accepting the funding that might change everything she stood for? Mia's voice haunted her, pressing through the heaviness in her heart. "What if we can't do this alone?" It echoed in waves, ringing in her ears like a warning bell. Resolutely, Sophie shut her laptop, her mind racing. She needed to talk to someone, to ground herself. She slipped on a worn jacket and stepped out into the chilling evening, the biting wind pulling at her resolve but sparking a fire in her spirit. As she walked toward the neighbor's table, memories flooded back. The laughter, the cooking lessons, the way the community came together to make every meal special. It wasn't just about food. It was love between neighbors. Love that forged bonds and dismantled loneliness. Arriving at the community center, the familiar scent of spices wafted from the kitchen, wrapping around her like a warm hug. Inside, small groups were setting tables, prepping ingredients, and sharing stories. The laughter echoed off the walls, brightening the otherwise dull space. This was home. "Hey, Sophie." A young boy from the neighborhood, Eli, ran up to her, arms open wide. He hugged her tightly. "Are we still having pizza this week?" She knelt down, brushing a stray hair from his forehead. "Of course. Just like last week," she said, her heart warming at the thought. Suddenly, Sophie felt a sense of reassurance wash over her, the kind she had hoped to ignite in the meeting. They were all here, working together, crafting something unique and beautiful. She glanced around and saw the expressions of people who were not just showing up but investing in something real: commitment, creativity, and courage. The email loomed in her mind, but so did their faces, their determination, their laughter, their collective spirit. They didn't need a savior or a wealthy benefactor. They needed each other. With renewed purpose, Sophie gathered everyone for an impromptu meeting. The chatter quieted down, and curious faces turned toward her. "I need your help," she said, her voice steady. "Let's brainstorm some ideas for fundraisers and donations. It's time to turn our vision into reality." She could see light rekindling in their eyes. Ideas bubbled up like warm dough, plans coming together in a creative blur. Bake sales, community dinners, craft markets. Sophie listened as excitement danced around the room. Moments of joy began to emerge, proof that this wasn't about what they lacked, but about what they had to offer. But as laughter and conversation swirled, her phone buzzed with a reminder, jolting her back to reality. The wealth of the donor still lingered, taunting her with possibilities and decisions. Do we need to dream big, or do we find power in the small? She wondered aloud, trying to gauge the room's response. Each voice chimed in, promising their commitment, but would their united resolve be enough? It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. They were building a community spirit brick by brick, each one crafted from their shared struggles and victories. Still, her heart ached from the weight of choices yet to be made. The storm was gathering again, and the road ahead was still uncertain. Could they truly carve a path strong enough to withstand the storms, or would the promises of easy help threaten to unravel all they had built? The chatter grew louder, each voice wrapping around Sophie like a lifeline. As plans flowed, she felt buoyed by the energy in the room. A bake sale? It could become a community event. Potluck dinners where everyone brought a dish from their culture, turning the meal into a feast of stories. They were more than ideas, they were sparks igniting the fire that Sophie had hoped to see kindled among her neighbors. Eli could hardly contain his excitement as he shouted, "Can we do a treasure hunt? I'll find all the clues." "Absolutely." Sophie laughed, the sound bubbling up from the core of her joy. His enthusiasm was infectious, reminding her of why she loved this place. The spirit, the connection. As the night wore on, Sophie found herself smiling and nodding along to the flow of ideas presented by people she admired deeply. The elderly Ms. Thompson suggested a gardening day, a way to both beautify the center and invite others to participate. 10-year-old Lucy proposed a Neighbor's Got Talent showcase, where they could highlight the skills and interests of everyone in the community. Each suggestion added another strand to the fabric they were weaving together, a tapestry showcasing their resilience and unity. Yet, lingering in the background was the dull hum of the email unread. Each proposal brought Sophie joy, but it was immediately followed by the weight of the choice she was avoiding. The donor's promise of financial security loomed, a dark specter in the corner of her mind. Could they truly do this without taking the easy route? Her heart raced as she scanned the room, every face alight with hope and anticipation. They were seeking connection, not just meals. They wanted purpose. And she was afraid of shattering that for them, afraid of throwing a golden lifeline at the cost of their dignity. Okay. Let's take a step back. What if we actually just focus on building ourselves up first? I know it's tough, but I want to put everything we have into this. Together. No shortcuts. A gasp rippled through the crowd, and she could feel the weight of their stares. Then, slowly, nods began to emerge, heads bobbing up and down as if they were coming to an unspoken agreement. Together, they nodded toward the same goal, to rise and shine without outside intervention. Each of us brings something to the table, Sophie added quietly, feeling warmth growing as she found courage in their united spirit. That's what truly matters. We all have stories, talents, and dreams. As the night wound down, Sophie began to feel lighter, the commotion of ideas shaping a plan that felt right. She knew they were journeying together, stepping into the unknown, and her pulse quickened at the thought of what lay ahead, but, as she gathered her things, her phone buzzed again, a message from the donor now glowing ominously on the screen. Please respond soon. It was a reminder that there would be a moment of reckoning, one that could test everything. As she headed out of the community center, Sophie looked back and considered the glowing faces of her friends, allies in a mission greater than any amount of money could provide. But would that be enough? What if the stakes grew beyond their dreams? The future felt like standing on the edge of a precipice, daring to jump. Could they really succeed, or were they opening the door to a reality too complicated to handle? The question lingered as she stepped out into the chill of the evening, a mix of hope and dread intertwined as the wind whipped around her. The true test was yet to come. Would they rise, or would they fall? As Sophie walked home, her mind raced, spinning with ideas and the echo of laughter from the community center. The chilly air whipped through the streets, but the warmth from the evening's meeting lingered in her heart. She couldn't shake off the hopeful faces of her neighbors, their excitement pulsating like a heartbeat, urging her to believe in their collective power. But then came the shadow of the email. Please respond soon. The words felt heavy, pressing down on her chest like a stone. Would she be betraying the community by not accepting the donor's help? With a sigh, she slipped her phone back into her pocket, willing herself to block the thoughts until she got home. She unlocked the door to her cozy apartment, the familiar scent of cinnamon wafting through the air from the candles she had lit earlier. It was a small comfort. Setting her keys down, she glanced at the dining table. The clutter of bills and papers seemed daunting. But on its edge sat a framed photo of her with Eli, fingers smudged with paint during one of their art projects. A smile cracked through the worry, reminding her of the joy in small moments. As she busied herself in the kitchen, the kettle boiling for some tea, she replayed the suggestions from the meeting in her mind. A treasure hunt, a potluck, a talent show. They weren't just activities, they were doors to building bonds. But what if there wasn't enough income coming in for the center? What if those ideas fell flat? Her phone buzzed again, jolting her from thoughts of worry. It was a message from Eli, brimming with enthusiasm. Sophie. I told my mom about the treasure hunt. She's going to help us plan it. Isn't that awesome? Instantly, the tension in her shoulders loosened. Eli's innocence and excitement were infectious, like a refreshing sip of lemonade on a hot day. That's amazing, Eli. We can't wait to see all the clues you come up with. She typed back, her thumbs flying across the screen. But as she set her phone down, another message notification popped up from the donor. I hope to hear your response soon. We can help make all these dreams come true. Turning off her phone, Sophie took a deep breath, hugging herself tightly. Her mind fought back and forth like a tennis match. She wanted to honor her community, yet she feared the consequences of turning down the lifeline. Did accepting help mean they were giving up? Or did it mean they were merely utilizing every resource available to them to succeed? After a quiet moment, she returned to her kitchen tasks, slicing an apple, its crisp scent mingling with the cinnamon. They needed to come together, and she needed to find a way to help them without drowning in expectations. Maybe she could propose something to bridge the gap, a creative way to accept help while still holding on to their dignity. That thought sparked a flicker of determination. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, breaking the stillness of the moment. It was a photo from Lucy, showcasing a hand-drawn flyer for the talent show. The colors were vibrant, filled with doodles and cheerful letters that spelled out Neighbor's Got Talent. Her heart swelled as she stared at it, realizing that this was what they were all about, unearthing hidden gems within each other. Sophie felt the warmth of resolve wash over her. It was time to gather everyone one more time and share her idea. They could accept the support in a way that empowered rather than diminished them. But as she glanced back at her phone, ready to dial the community center, another thought invaded her mind. Would they really understand the delicate balance she was trying to manage? Sophie bit her lip, knowing that the next meeting would hinge on her relationship with both the community and the donor. She stood on the precipice again, with this new possibility taking shape. While she felt brave enough to share her vision, shadows of doubt still loomed large. Could they find a middle ground that preserved their integrity? The answer felt both tantalizingly close and maddeningly out of reach. Sophie took a deep breath, her spirit ignited once more. The night would again be alive with voices, and she had to lead them, but uncertainty danced just beneath the surface. Tomorrow would be the moment where her heart would need to choose. Would it leap toward partnership, or would it draw back in fear of losing what they fought so hard to build? The path ahead remained unclear, and she needed to make her decision. She couldn't help but wonder what would the community say. The next morning was crisp and bright, sunlight spilling into Sophie's apartment, illuminating the mess of papers cluttering her small dining table. She stood there, distracted, her mind racing with possibilities, each one more vibrant than the last. The talent show, the treasure hunt, a potluck. The ideas bubbled up, but each brought with it the weight of the donor's email hovering in the back of her mind. With a determined sigh, Sophie brewed a pot of coffee, hoping its rich aroma could ignite some clarity. As she poured herself a steaming cup, the ritual of morning calm mingled with the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. She sipped slowly, letting the warmth spread through her, trying to capture that fleeting feeling of hope from last night's meeting. She glanced at the flyer Lucy had sent, the playful drawings of neighbors performing and cheering, laughter dancing on the paper. It was a reminder that they were a community, not just individuals grappling with their struggles. Smiling at the vibrant doodles, she felt the fire of possibility rekindle within her. As she grabbed her phone, nerves fluttered in her stomach. She knew the upcoming meeting wasn't just about bringing everyone together. It was a chance to open an honest dialogue about their dreams, how to weave the donor's help seamlessly into their fabric. But could she articulate that balance? With a deep breath, she started typing a message in their community group chat. Hey everyone. I'm excited to get together tonight to share some ideas about the community center. I know we can work together to make this even better. She hit send, her heart racing. Once she arrived at the community center later that evening, the familiar buzz of conversation enveloped her like a warm blanket. The scent of popcorn filled the air, mingling with the sounds of laughter and chatter. As she stepped inside, smiles greeted her from every corner, each face a beacon of familiarity and support. Hey, Sophie. Eli waved from a group of kids scribbling down ideas on a chalkboard. His enthusiasm was infectious, and she found herself grinning again, feeling encouraged despite her earlier doubts. Gathering the crowd was easier than she expected. As the room filled, Sophie stood in front of them, heart pounding, surrounded by friends and neighbors. She scanned their faces: curiosity, excitement, hope. Thanks for coming, everyone. I know these times can be tough. But I truly believe we can create something beautiful if we work together. Sophie let her words flow, sharing the thoughts swirling in her mind. She expressed her love for the community while holding on to the potential support of the donor, navigating the balance she had been fretting about. By accepting their help, we don't lessen our value, we enhance what we can do together. Her voice trembled slightly, but passion surged through her. By hosting a talent show, we celebrate our skills. By organizing a treasure hunt, we reignite fun and connection. And through potlucks, we share our culture and flavors. A murmur of agreement rolled through the room. Sophie felt hopeful. They were pondering her words, envisioning the possibilities. At that moment, she realized she was not just fighting for the center but for the collective dream they all shared. As she prepared to open the floor for questions, a voice piped up from the back. But what if the donor comes with strings attached? Will we lose the heart of what we have here? The question hung in the air, a stark reality check. It cut through the excitement, forcing the room to refocus. Sophie's heart dropped, doubt seeped back in. Was she really willing to risk their authenticity for financial stability? Gathering her thoughts, she let her eyes meet Eli's. He smiled, and she felt that spark of determination return. What if we make an agreement? We define the terms. We create a partnership that reflects who we are. A sense of hope washed over her again as hands began to raise, ideas flying around the room, voices uniting with energy and passion. But as discussion spun into a whirlwind of optimism, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that the heart of their community was on a precarious edge. Would they be able to protect what they cherished? The laughter and love she had seen in those past weeks felt fragile. As ideas flowed, so did uncertainty about what accepting the donor's help would truly mean. Sophie swirled back to the flyer Lucy had created, each colorful detail reminding her of their unity. But the fears still lingered, too palpable to ignore. How far were they willing to go to ensure this partnership did not drown them in someone else's vision? With every heart beating around her, Sophie knew they teetered on the brink of a defining choice. The risk was real, yet they were also on the verge of creating something extraordinary. What path would they choose? How would their journey shape their community's future? The room quieted as Sophie gazed out at the sea of expectant faces. Their energy crackled in the air, yet the lingering doubts washed over her like a cool breeze. Eli's encouragement felt like a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge of fear. "Let us outline what we want," someone shouted from the back, drawing her attention back to the moment. A girl named Mia stood tall, eyes sparkling. "What do we want to keep? What makes our community special?" Sophie's heart raced. Yes, that was the essence of it all. Absolutely. What do we love about our community center? Let us list those qualities, she replied, rallying the crowd. As voices began to chime in, the energy shifted. Stories spilled forth, filled with nostalgia and warmth. The weekly potlucks. Grandma's famous mac and cheese. Someone called out, followed by laughter. Another added, the late-night movie marathons. Sophie felt the corners of her mouth lift as she listened, the shared memories lighting up the room. This was their heart, a tapestry woven by each thread of laughter, each meal shared. Each voice counted. Now how can we welcome new help while keeping this spirit? Sophie asked, her pulse quickening with anticipation. The question was heavy but important. The voices leveled up again. Maybe we have a say in how the funds are used. Yes. We could fund a new garden space. Ideas blossomed, as colorful as the flyer Lucy had designed. Then, Sophie noticed a frown forming on Lucy's face. But what if they want control over those decisions? That's the kind of thing that could change how we operate. Lucy spoke up softly, but her words smothered the excitement like a sudden chill. Sophie could feel the tension return. That's a valid point, Lucy. But we can make it clear what we need. An idea lit up in her mind, bright like a bulb in the dark. What if we create a committee? A group to meet with the donor directly and discuss our vision? Eager murmurs filled the air again, and Sophie could see people nodding. This would ensure they held on to their values, their voice, while still embracing the potential help. Eli jumped in, yeah. We could rotate members on that committee. Everyone can have a say. Exactly. Sophie responded, her heart swelling at the unity forming before her. If we work together, we can respect our values while opening doors. The room surged with renewed enthusiasm, ideas bouncing off the walls. People began raising hands, throwing out suggestions that swirled through the air with excitement. The worries eased, replaced momentarily by palpable hope. Then a new, softer voice came from the back. But what if the donor doesn't like our terms? What if they choose not to fund us? Silence fell once more. All those buoyant ideas felt delicate now, as if they could shatter like glass. Sophie swallowed hard, thoughts racing. Then we adapt, she finally said, a steady tone returning to her voice. We stay true to ourselves and find other solutions if we have to. But we won't know until we try. The weight of possibility filled the room once more. The crowd began discussing strategies to engage the donor, exploring ways to show their community spirit clearly. Sophie watched as this group of neighbors began to connect even deeper, creating a bond stronger than before. As they moved forward with planning, Sophie felt the pulse of their community vibrant again. It felt like they were on the verge of something incredible. They were crafting a voice, a vision that celebrated their integrity, and Sophie welcomed each brilliant moment. With the meeting winding down, a renewed energy surrounded her, but an unsettling feeling still nestled in her chest. Would they truly hold on to their heart through this? Would they find a way to be seen and heard without losing the essence of what made them special? Sophie took a deep breath, casting her gaze over the excited chatter around her. As the group wrapped up, a thought bubbled to the surface of her mind. What if, amidst all this, a hidden challenge awaited them? Something far beyond their control that could change everything? She didn't understand it yet, but something felt off. With hope and determination coursing through the room, she couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing. Would they be ready when it hit? As the last echoes of conversation faded, Sophie felt a mixed wave of relief and anxiety ripple through her body. The meeting had been a turning point, a moment of gathering strength that they all needed. Yet the knot in her stomach remained, tightening as she thought about the looming uncertainty. Eli approached her, a bright grin plastered across his face. You did it, Sophie. You brought everyone together. His enthusiasm was infectious, but she couldn't fully reciprocate. Thanks, Eli, but I can't shake this feeling that something's coming, she replied, her brow furrowed. Like what? A storm? He laughed, but the concern in his eyes revealed he might have sensed it too. Maybe, she sighed. I can't ignore the vibe tonight. What if this donor has hidden agendas? What if they don't respect our community like we do? Eli nodded, the light fading from his eyes. I guess we'll deal with it if it comes, right? Yeah. But even as she spoke, uncertainty loomed like a shadow. Just then, she caught sight of Lucy across the room, her arms crossed tightly, brows knit together. Sophie approached her friend, wanting to understand the source of her worry. Lucy? You okay? Sophie asked gently. I don't know, Soph, Lucy admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I love everything we talked about, but I keep thinking what if they just don't get it? All our homegrown ideas, they could just bulldoze them. Sophie leaned in, their faces close. We won't let that happen. Lucy blinked, her sharp gaze softening. What if we make it our mission to show them? I mean, not just tell them how special this place is but actually show them. That sounds like a plan. Sophie felt the excitement bubble up again, their hope reigniting. We could organize a community showcase. A day to invite them to experience everything firsthand. The idea took root, and Sophie watched as Lucy began to smile. Yes, potluck, activities, and the garden. They need to feel this love, this homey feel. Exactly. Sophie felt a surge of energy. They could harness their spirit, create something unforgettable that could not only impress the donor but bind their community even more tightly together. With a renewed sense of purpose, they rallied the remaining group members, sharing the idea for the showcase. People began bouncing around suggestions for food, activities, and creative presentations. Laughter and enthusiasm filled the air once again, overshadowing any doubts. As the excitement built, Sophie caught a glimpse of Eli whispering animatedly to another friend, their eyes sparkling with the same light that shone through the room. Yet that uneasy feeling still lingered at the back of her mind. Her intuition was like a whispering wind, gentle yet persistent. Later that night, Sophie sat at her desk, scrolling through community messages filled with optimism about the showcase. Yet, just when she thought things were aligning, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was from the town hall the donor wanted to meet that Friday, a week before their planned showcase. Her heart sank. What did this mean? Why now? This wasn't how it was supposed to unfold. The excitement faded into uncertainty. How would they present their vision now? The weight of their upcoming meeting felt heavier than ever. She knew that if they were to stand together, they would need to turn their fear into resolve. Sophie took a deep breath, the flicker of hope still burning bright. Would their spirit shine through in this pivotal moment, or would unforeseen challenges threaten all they had built? As she stared into the darkness outside her window, one thought screamed louder than the rest. Would this pivotal meeting become their moment of truth or an unraveling of everything they had fought for? The answer loomed ahead, just out of reach. Sophie hardly slept that night. Her mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. The walls of her room felt as though they were closing in on her. She kept picturing the donor's expression, imagining their indifference, their smugness. The thought twisted in her gut. Friday arrived too quickly, each tick of the clock amplifying her dread. She met with Lucy and Eli before the meeting, their faces matching her anxiety. "I wish I could just know what they really want," Eli said, pushing back his hair in frustration. "Let us stay focused on our community's strengths," Sophie replied, hoping to sound more confident than she felt. "If we pour ourselves into this, they can't ignore what we represent." Lucy nodded, but her eyes held worry. "It's just what if they have their own agenda? What if we're not enough?" Sophie reached out and squeezed her hand, trying to convey reassurance. "We've got each other. That's what matters." The meeting took place in the town hall, a building that often felt full of hope, but today it felt cavernous and cold. As they entered the room, filled with unfamiliar faces, Sophie's heart raced. The donor, a stout man with an oversized suit and a distracting tie, grinned too broadly. "So glad to finally meet you," he boomed, the sound echoing off the walls. Sophie noticed his gaze drifting over images that adorned their walls, photos of community events, youth training, and gardens buzzing with life. "Impressive little operation you have here." Once seated, Sophie's mind went blank as he launched into a list of expectations that left her reeling. Terms like profitability and scalability surged through her head, each one sounding alien against the backdrop of their community goals. As he spoke, she felt Lucy's fingers tighten in hers, and she glanced at Eli. His brow was furrowed, mirroring her own confusion. The donor used slick words like tools, aiming them at their hearts but leaving them feeling hollow. "Tell me," the donor paused, looking directly at them. "What's your unique selling point?" Involuntarily, Sophie felt her chest tighten. Their community wasn't a product to be sold, it was a family, a refuge. She struggled to grasp the words to express that, her voice barely making it past the lump in her throat. Eli broke through the uncertainty. "Our strength is in our bonds, our history," he said, glancing at the pictures lining the walls. "Each initiative is born out of love for our home, not merely a business model." Sophie's heart soared at his words. She could see the flicker of understanding in Lucy's eyes. It was a start, at least they hadn't lost their voice altogether. However, the donor seemed unimpressed. "Interesting, but I want numbers." "I mean, who wouldn't?" The mood shifted. What had started as a hopeful gathering felt frighteningly critical. Each word exchanged felt like a weight that threatened to crush them. Sophie felt her heart sink as she realized they were caught in a battle of ideals. They had come to share their passion, but he was asking them for something entirely different. With every moment passing, it became clearer they were more at the mercy of this man than they had hoped. As the meeting wound down, Sophie felt a new determination grow within her. They couldn't let this one meeting define their future. They had to fight for what they cared about, a community that held every sweet memory and deep connection. As they left the town hall, Sophie took a breath of fresh air, trying to shake off the oppressive atmosphere. "We can't give up, right?" she asked, looking at Eli and Lucy, but a question loomed within her. She knew they had to devise a plan. "Of course not," Lucy said firmly, her spirit rekindled. "We'll show him," Eli added. "He needs to understand what we stand for." But in the back of Sophie's mind, doubt gnawed at her. Would they be able to transform this crisis into a life-changing solution? Days ahead loomed with uncertainty, and she couldn't help but wonder, would they have the courage to rise above this challenge, or would their strength falter when it mattered most? The days between that unsettling meeting and the showcase felt like an eternity. Sophie paced her room, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she prepared for the day that could change everything. She poured all her energy into finalizing every detail, guided by the strength of her community. On the day of the showcase, bright sunshine streamed into Willow Creek, a direct contrast to the growing darkness of Sophie's fears. A vibrant buzz filled the air as neighbors set up tables filled with colorful foods, each dish reflecting personal stories and cultural backgrounds. Laughter danced around, and as Sophie looked out at her community, anxiety started to melt away. This was home, yet in the back of her mind, the donoress' image loomed like a shadow, a reminder of their potential future hanging in the balance. There was no backing down now. As guests began to arrive, Sophie felt a surge of excitement. Eli darted around with his friends, organizing the treasure hunt, while Lucy mingled with adults, shining as a spokesperson for their collective cause. "This is about more than just a meal," she asserted passionately. "It's about creating opportunity." Sophie took a deep breath, stepping up to the improvised stage, her heart pounding in her chest. With her friends rallying behind her like a shield, she welcomed everyone warmly. "Thank you all for being here today. We've come together not just as individuals but as a family. This isn't just food, we're celebrating our stories, our dreams." Cheers erupted, expanding her confidence as she scanned the crowd. Each face radiated shared hope. Families who had once suffered in silence were now standing proud, uniting for a cause larger than themselves. As they moved into the evening's activities, a potluck, talent showcase, and a plant sale, Sophie felt the energy amplify. Lively music filled the air, and as neighbors shared their unique talents, she realized something significant. The showcase wasn't just about impressing the donor, it was about reclaiming their narrative. They were not merely a community project, they were a robust entity with dreams, passions, and strength. When the time came, she spotted the donor arriving, an unsettling grin plastered on his face. He walked around, watching, taking notes, but she didn't let that throw her off. Instead, she approached him deliberately, the words she'd rehearsed echoing in her mind. "Welcome. What do you think so far?" she asked with a quiet confidence. The donor was taken aback by her forthrightness. "It's impressive," he replied, his voice more muted now, like he was measuring his words carefully. "So much enthusiasm. I'm curious how you plan to make this sustainable." "That's exactly what we're highlighting here," Sophie said, gesturing toward the tables. "We are a community self-sufficient and united. Each person here contributes, young and old. This spirit is our driving force." Her heart raced as she felt the weight of everyone's eyes on her, determination wrapped around her words like a warm embrace. The donor seemed to reconsider, his smile wavering. For a moment, his expression shifted from calculating to contemplative. "So, you're saying you intend to maintain autonomy even if I assist?" he asked. "That's right." Eli chimed in, the virtues of their bond harmonizing with Sophie's resolve. "Anything that helps our community move forward without changing its essence is a worthy investment." A spark ignited in Sophie as she saw murmurs of agreement ripple through the crowd. They had taken ownership of the conversation, framing it in a way that was undeniably them. In that moment, she understood their true power. They had each other. They had community. They were stronger together, and their values would guide the way forward. "Well, I appreciate the invitation and the heart of what I've witnessed here," the donor said slowly, his voice now low. "Let us discuss a partnership that ensures your mission remains intact." A wave of quiet approval washed over everyone. Sophie's heart soared. They had turned a corner. As dusk fell and laughter filled the air, Sophie found herself reflecting on the transformation that had sparked within her. From fear to confident determination, she had become someone willing to stand for her community. She understood now that they were not just surviving, they were thriving. Later that night, when the event subsided, Sophie looked around and smiled at the sight of her neighbors' faces glowing, hearts united. She felt gratitude for their shared strength and resolve, and she whispered a quiet promise to herself. Whatever came next, she would embrace it as long as she had them at her side. The storms had come, but they had found their way through together. In the end, it was about more than just food on a table. It was about dignity, connection, and the unwavering belief that through the darkest times, light could be born from community. And as she closed her eyes that night, a radiant smile spread across her face, knowing they would rise again. This was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one worth every step. Now, if you found inspiration in Sophie's story of transformation and courage, you need to subscribe now to never miss more amazing stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm and make sure these messages spread far and wide. What did you think of the ending? Comment your thoughts below, and don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your voice matters. Help inspire others.